So welcome, everyone. I'm Pat Soldano, president of Family Enterprise USA. We advocate for multi-generational family business and their lifetime of earnings in Washington, D.C. for all sizes of business and all industries. I'm very pleased to have with me today Lin Sensenig, who is the president of Houck Group, Inc. Houck Group has been around since 1947, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is where they're headquartered. And so, Lin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So let's get started and talk first about the business in general, the history. How did the business come about? And maybe tell us a little bit about the employees and the employee base size.
Yeah, absolutely. So Houck was started as a union residential masonry company back in 1947. After Lawrence Houck came back from World War II and started this small enterprise with a partner. He and that partner maintained the business up until the 60s. Gary Houck is second generation, and Gary's brother Lawrence was actually unfortunately killed in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot. So when that happened, Lawrence, I would say, was going through a difficult time, obviously, as the whole family was, but Gary stepped in. That would have been in the late 60s, early 70s. I forget exactly what year that was, but he stepped in and took over the business and started operating it like his own. His father retained ownership at that point, and Gary bought the business out from his dad over a period of time. Gary really functioned, I would say, it was a pretty small business when he kind of took it over. He really functioned like well, certainly he's an entrepreneur at heart, obviously, but also maybe more like a first generation owner. He was hard driving and very much got down in the mix, in the weeds, and would oftentimes stay late to do payroll and do billing and all the kind of stuff that goes with a small business. He acquired a couple of businesses along the way and eventually added roofing to that mix, and then they developed a pretty sizable business outside of the union masonry business that was non-union. So Houck is dual badged. We have a union component, we have a non-union component, but separate trades. So over the years, they continued to focus on commercial buildings. They kind of left the residential side and then continued to grow the business, and at some point made the decision to not pursue new construction really at all, and just focus on restoration. So the business then expanded into the concrete restoration, masonry restoration, caulking, waterproofing. We do a lot of work inside manufacturing facilities, putting trench drains in, all that kind of stuff that would come with restoration. And then I would say in the past 5 years, I came on board in 2016. In 2019, we kind of started on this path of buying other smaller family businesses and integrating them into our family business. So that process drew pretty significant growth. So we went from a little over 100 employees to now close to 300 plus employees now, and widened our footprint somewhat, but would still stay within about a 2-hour radius of Harrisburg, PA. And proud to say, still family held. So we are in the process of transitioning the business. So a lot of the things that Family Enterprise focuses on will become really important to us as we transition the business to third generation, which is Gary's daughter, Kara. So we are looking forward to Kara coming into the business. Very sharp young lady, and we will be a woman-owned business in at least, I would say, several years once Kara reaches majority shareholder. But right now, it's her and her dad hold the ownership. So I was brought in really to run the business and really at some point get it ready for sale, because Gary didn't have any other succession plans at that point. And a couple of years ago, we just started having the conversation with Kara, asking her if she would be interested in remote ownership. Her and her husband live in Wisconsin and plan to stay there. So, yeah, she graciously agreed to take that on. We're grateful that she did, and she's going to also help us with company wellness and suicide prevention, which is a particular passion for her. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at now. So now I would say 5 different business units, about 75 million revenue, to give you some idea of our size, and still proudly family held.
Well, so you are a non-family member and the first one to hold this role of president in the company. So, are you going to continue in that role when Kara steps up and becomes majority owner?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, so she had certainly was interested in me staying on board. I'm not going to be around forever, obviously, but yeah, my plan is to stay on board, continue running the business, and continue implementing the long range plan that is approved by the advisory board that I basically report to. So Kara's a member of that advisory board. She will be a full remote. Obviously, she's not going to be coming in here, but I will in effect report to her on the advisory board, and then she'll work with me in the company doing the company wellness stuff. So yeah, but no, the plan is to continue to run the business for the family. I think it was an important break generationally, to have me kind of step into that role, and we've had good fortune with the business, so we've been blessed that way. Yeah, that's the plan. The plan is to continue running the business like this. If I could ever convince a 3rd or 4th generation Houck to come in and run the business, we would do that, and that could happen. Kara has 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
You never know how that happens. But at this point, the mandate is make sure that we have succession planning in place to continue to run it for the family.
So the advisory board, is it just that? It's an advisory board. It's not official legal board. So does it include family members as well as non-family members?
It does. It's a small advisory board, and it's not fiduciary. It includes an outside president of a consulting group and a former CPA that they used to do work for us. They still do tax work for us, and it includes Gary and it includes Kara. So really, and it includes myself and my CFO. So yeah, we meet quarterly, and we certainly have to look to them to approve budgets. They certainly approve our growth plans. They approve acquisitions as they come along. And yeah, they would be basically my boss.
Okay. So the restorations that you just curious, you do them within a 2-hour radius, as you said, of Harrisburg, but do you do crisis or natural disaster, I should say, restorations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the short answer to that is no. That's not our sweet spot, but we certainly have been asked for help in disaster areas especially on the roofing side, for instance. There's been potential over the years, and we have done this over the years, going to actually send crews down to help in areas where there's just a significant need, but it's not what we specialize in. There's great companies out there that focus on restoration and that type of restoration. And no, our stuff is typically building maintenance. We do a lot of work. I didn't mention this. We do a lot of work for property managers. So that kind of routine maintenance is what we really specialize in.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your community. And how is the company involved in the community? What organizations do you support? Are your employees involved at all? Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We typically try to take on one charitable project a year, and we've helped out some boys and girls clubs. We're in the process of helping out finish up a veterans center close by here from a roofing standpoint. And we've certainly, these are typically stuff that gets initiated at the employee level. They identify the need, and then we step in and help out, and certainly promote community activity within the company. And a lot of times it's a group activity, and it really helps with morale, and it helps with camaraderie, that kind of stuff. I feel like our biggest impediment to growth is simply labor. So the more we can become involved in the community and become a positive voice in the community, the more we get our name out there. So it's certainly something we work hard on.
Okay, that's great. Um, that's a great approach. I think having the employees engaged is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the economics of the business a little bit. As you know, Family Enterprise USA advocates for various economic and tax issues at a national level in Washington, D.C. for family businesses. And we're always concerned because we feel that there are negative tax policies that are affecting family businesses in an adverse way and really not helping them. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about any of the regulations or tax policies that you feel have been positive or negatively affecting your business.
No, that's a great question. And I know this probably sounds a little disingenuous, but certainly the PPP program came along at a time when we really needed it. So we were fortunate for that. And I realize that probably sounds a little self-serving, but that was certainly an example of government being, I think, proactive in helping us out. I think anything that penalizes you for growth it can be a little challenging. So we're growth oriented culture and a growth oriented business. So I don't feel like the system is really set up well to reward that. I also don't feel like the system is really set up well to facilitate generational transition. So that's something that we're pretty passionate about here, and I know you guys are too. So I think that facilitating family businesses to stay family businesses is really a worthwhile cause. I can tell you that our folks here were so happy when they understood that third generation Houck was going to continue to own the business, because the alternative for us would have been probably a venture capital private equity partner, something like that would have come along and probably grown us to the next level. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it would have been a much more difficult ride for our folks. And so our folks really resonate with the family feel here, and we try really hard, even as we bring acquisitions into the fold, to maintain that. And the larger we grow, the more difficult that can be. But anything that can promote family enterprise, I think is just it's just going to really help. I know, Pat, you had thrown out some numbers on the revenue generated from family businesses in the U.S., and it's incredible. I forget what they were, but
yeah, they generate 59% of the jobs in this country and 54% of the GDP, or $7.7 trillion. So,
that's
and
incredible.
to your point, most members of Congress have no idea that that is the case.
Right. So yeah, I would say that any kind of tax and succession transition stuff that we can get done that would ease the facility of that, and it certainly, obviously, it does sound a little bit self-serving, but I don't think promoting family business is self-serving. I think it's good for the U.S. It's good for our economy, and it's good for our employees.
Well, how about the organization? Are you a pass-through entity? So are you organized as an S Corp or an LLC or an SP, LP, or are you a regular corporation?
We are an S Corp.
Okay, so as an S Corp, you are a pass-through, and that means that you are paying ordinary income tax rates, not 21% corporate tax rates. You're paying 37% plus. And that is why family businesses' number one concern today is the income tax. And second is the estate tax, which you alluded to a little bit earlier, in the difficulty of transitioning from one generation to the next. And the laws really around the estate and gift tax laws don't really help you do that. So, and I'm sure you've done some planning around that, but is the income tax and the estate tax two of your primary concerns?
Yeah, no question about it. And to your point, you can do some planning, but it's really just comes down to deferral, right? You're eventually going to have to pay the piper. So I think, you can do planning, and we do, but eventually it amounts to deferral, and you're going to at some point end up with a pretty large, significant tax bill, no matter how well you do it, on the planning side.
Well, is there anything in specific that Congress can do to help you with your business around tax policy or economic policy? I mean, you mentioned the PPP loans. They stepped up and they provided that, which was very helpful to a lot of businesses. Other than that, are there other things, is there legislation they could change or make better for your business?
I mentioned the fact that we really struggle with labor, and I would love if we could come up with some kind of a reasonable immigration policy that would allow us to quickly and efficiently get folks in here that could help us with labor. We really struggle with it, and we actually have some folks in our business that we are sending to school basically full time just to keep them here on student visas, so that they can work for us. So if there would be a reasonable way to get to the point where we could get folks, folks who want to contribute, who want to work, who've got great work ethic, and just want to be able to pursue their piece of the American dream, I'm all in favor of legislation that would help us get there in a sensible way. It doesn't mean I'm in favor of open borders by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not, but I am in favor of legislation that would help us get folks in. I believe the number I heard more recently was that we need about 1 million folks coming in a year just to replace those who are going out. So it's a definite need, and it is really difficult for us. Whereas I would say 30 or 40 years ago, we could have relied on, getting the country farm boy in here to do roofing. It just doesn't happen anymore. So, we're looking at a lot of different people groups, different areas we can get to focus on to get more labor into our business.
So that makes sense. So what we really need in this country is an immigration policy that works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That really does work.
Yes.
Really good point. Are there other things? I mean, you brought up a really important point, which is, workplace talent is part of that. Benefits, wages, safe working conditions. So are there other issues around, workplace issues that you can comment on or would help you?
I think that, and I don't want to get too far into necessarily politics here, but I think reasonable expectations in terms of even some of the ESG policies that I see coming across from some of our customers that we're doing work for can become challenging for us. So I think just making sure that we have reasonable expectations. We certainly pride ourselves in having a compassionate workplace, and we certainly want to be inclusive from that standpoint. But we also need to have a reasonableness about it. And when we may struggle, for instance, to find minorities, it's not for lack of trying, but we struggle with it. We've partnered with a couple of community groups locally that have helped. But it is a challenge, something we're trying to work on, but it's not, we're not moving fast enough with it. So anything around those lines, I think would be helpful. And I think also just making sure that we don't have intrusive, or I would say unfair expectations in terms of OSHA regulations, and those types of things would be very helpful for us. I see in some cases, OSHA does act as a partner, and I think that's entirely appropriate. We want more than anything to send more than financial success. We want to send our folks home whole. Safety is really, really important to us. And yet we still find sometimes that end up at loggerheads with government organizations who have, I would say needless, and sometimes maybe not pointless, but darn close pointless to regulations that don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, Lynn, really appreciate you being on the call today. Are there any final remarks or comments that you'd like to make?
No, just a plug for Family Enterprise. We're very happy to be part of it. We're excited about the work that you guys do, and certainly very supportive of it. And yeah, just keep up the good work. Spread the word.
Okay, we definitely will do that. So Lynn, once again, thank you so much for being on the call. We really appreciate your time and your candor.